So I'm going to be showing you how to terminate these JE automotive connectors. This is just one way of making some really stable connections inside a vehicle. In this case, I'm going to be using it for my project, connecting some external lights. I can be connecting these a little bit later, but first I got to make sure all these connections are made, and they're made really well. What I'm going to be doing is I'm actually going to be attaching this male end to these wires right here. The trickiest part is just making sure that the wire length is just long enough to actually fit inside the crimp, but not too long, or else it's not going to fit very well. In this case, I'm going to strip off. This guy is just a universal kind of stripper. You can't adjust it with the screw right here. I just generally do things by feel. It does take some practice, so when you're using one of these things for the first time, you will likely take out some of the wire. Just be careful. You don't want to take out too much. These wires are actually stranded. I think there's 17 strands in these particular wires. So you just got to be careful when you are stripping them that you're not going to be pulling out all the wire with it. So it just takes a little finesse here. I'm going to take about that much. I'm going to take about that much out, and you just pull, and then you got a nice clean string of straight wire here. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect it to one of these guys. These guys come on a little reel automatic already from the factory. You just got to break them off. And then the most important thing is that you got to slide it in, and there's actually this end right here, there's a box. You just got to throw that wire into the end of that box. Make sure it's nice, it fits nice in there. Make sure you got the insulation is actually rubbing up against the end of the, you can see this little pin is supposed to hold in the insulation, and then these pins here, these little crimp parts are actually crimping into the metal of the wire. The first thing I'd like to do is that the crimper I have doesn't really work quite as well as I'd hoped. So I'm actually gonna kind of smush down the insulation parts, because then it's actually gonna hold in place. So it's not pretty, which is fine because it's gonna get pretty in a second, but you look at it, nice. So you're just gonna hold it in, because when I go into the crimper, this is like a $20 crimper off Amazon right here. I'm actually going to be using the 18 to 20 gauge setting, if you can see that right there, 18 to 20. So I'm going to throw this in here, and I'm going to this has a wider part and a thinner part. I'm actually going to be concentrating to making sure that the wider part is actually hitting the insulation area, while the thinner part is actually going to be hitting the part where it's actually crimping the wire. So just like that. So you can actually hit this a couple times if you wanted to. Let's say if you went out too far, you can actually hit it a couple times. One thing you want to make sure is that you do not crimp the block, the square area. So I didn't get it all the way, but one thing you don't want to do is get any of this. This is the important part. This is actually what's going to kind of click into those connectors. So now I'm going to focus on just getting the rest of this. So with this tool, you kind of push down, and it clicks until you get the full crimp. I'm going to do it one more time without wrecking this. Boom. So this crimp is done, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw it into the connector just to make sure everything fits well. It should slide in. You might actually have to use a needle nose to kind of give it a little nudge. You should hear an audible click when it happens. And the most important part to realize is, for this stage, is that this square, one edge is, you can kind of see it, one edge is a little thicker. that edge is actually going to be, the edge is going to be kind of going right down the middle, and it's going to be facing the clip. So these guys, the clip is right here. So you want to make sure when you're pushing this in, it's going to be facing the right direction. So I believe, yep, there we go. So make sure I have it in the right place. When you're lining these up, you obviously want to make sure that you're keeping the wires the same color orientation, just for your sanity when you're actually kind of putting everything together in the end product. There, nice audible click. So now it's in there. It's in there. You can't pull it out. I'm going to fast forward. I'm going to do this to the other guys. Now that you guys know at least how to do one. When you're working down the line, make sure you're working out. So for instance, my next wire on this sequence at least is the red wire. So I'm going to work the red wire and then finally the black wire. That way, if you make a mistake, you can kind of pull it out. It's easier. If you do the black one then the red one, you're going to be in a world of hurt. So I'm going to kind of fast forward, do these guys, and then I'll be back once it's done. There you go. The biggest thing I was just thinking about as I was doing this is that I typically, with any type of these connectors, I always order more than I need. Yeah, as you can see just from down here on my desk here, I've already tried this a couple times with the other connector. If you haven't done this in a while, it's good to have extras. That way you can kind of start over clean without having to halt your project completely. These guys are on here pretty good. I'm very satisfied with that. So I'm going to be doing the other sides next.